Chapter 4. What is holding us back? The only limit to our realization of tomorrow will be our doubts of today. Franklin D. Roosevelt. What would happen if you drove your car with the brakes on? You would never go full speed. The brakes would offer resistance. Your car would overheat and break down. If it didn't break down, the resistance would strain the engine. To get to your destination, you would have to make one of two choices. You could either press the accelerator harder and risk damage, or release the brakes to make the car go faster. This analogy is good parallel to life because many of us go through life with our emotional brakes on. What are the brakes? They are the factors that prevent you from achieving success. Fear, procrastination, lack of pride, so forth. The way to release your emotional brakes is by building a positive attitude and high self-esteem and accepting responsibility. Failure. 20 reasons why we don't achieve excellence. Life is like a 10-speed bicycle. Most of us have gears we never use. Charles quotes. There are 20 factors that can cause you to fail. By working to overcome these factors, you can release the brakes that are holding back your success. Number 1. Unwillingness to take risk. Success involves taking calculated risk. Risk taking does not mean gambling foolishly and behaving irresponsibly. People sometimes make irresponsible and rash behavior as risk taking. They end up with negative result and blame it on bad luck. Risk taking is relative. The concept of risk varies from person to person and can be a result of training. To both trained mountain climber and a novice. Mountain climbing is a risky, but to trained person it is not irresponsible risk taking. Responsible risk taking is based on knowledge, training, careful study, confidence and competence. Factors that give you the courage to act while facing fear. The person who never attempts anything risky makes no mistakes. However, not making the attempt too often a bigger mistake than making the attempt and failing. Indecision is a habit forming and contagious. Many opportunities are lost because of indecision. Take risk, but don't gamble. Risk takers move ahead with their eyes open. Gamblers shoot in the dark. Once someone asked a farmer if he had planted wheat for the season. The farmer replied, "No, I was afraid it wouldn't rain." The man asked, "Did you plant corn?" The farmer said, "No, I was afraid that insects would eat the corn." Then the man asked, "What did you plant?" The farmer said, "Nothing, I played it safe." Risks. To laugh is to risk appearing the fool. To weep is to risk appearing the sentimental. To reach out for another is to risk of involvement. To expose feeling is to risk exposing your true self. To place your ideas, your dreams before a crowd is to risk their loss. To love is to risk not being loved in return. To live is to risk dying. To hope is to risk despair. To try is to risk failure. But risk must be taken because the greatest hazard in life is to risk a nothing. The person who risks nothing, does nothing, has nothing, and is nothing. They may avoid suffering and sorrow, but they cannot learn, feel, change, grow, love, or live. Changed by their attitude, they are slaves. They have forfeited their freedom. Only a person who risks is free. Number 2. Lack of persistence. When problem seems insurmountable, quitting may look like the easiest way out. It is true for every marriage, job and relationship. Winners are struck but not destroyed. We all have had our setbacks in life. But failing does not mean we are failures. What is the difference between persistence and obstinacy? The difference is the persistence represents a strong will and obstinacy represents a strong wound. Most people not because they lack knowledge or a talent because they quit. The total secret of success lies in two traits: persistence and resistance. Persist in what must be done and resist from what ought to not to be done. A man is a hero not because he's braver than anyone else, but because he's brave for 10 minutes longer. Ralph Waldo Emerson. Number 3. Instant gratification. The desire to make million overnight has made the lottery a flourishing business. We are all living in an age of instant gratification. There is a pill of everything from waking up to putting you to sleep. People want to take a pill to get rid of their problems. In same way, when people want to be instant millionaires, they take shortcuts and compromise on their integrity. Remember that when going for instant gratification, one never thinks of consequences, only of momentary pleasures. Today's generation defines the ideal diet as one that will take off 5 pounds of good intentions. These are people who don't want any more birthdays but want all the presents. When you think short term, not long term, it is limited vision. With limited vision, you will never see any worthwhile goals. Number 4. Lack of priorities. People make substitution where they ought not to. For example, in relationship, they trade money and gifts for affection and time. Some people find it easier to buy things for their children and spouse to compensate for their absence than to spend time interacting with them. When we don't have our priorities right, we waste time, not realizing that time wasted is life wasted. Prioritizing requires discipline to do what needs to be done rather than taking action based on our moods and fancies. These days, too much emphasis is placed on success and failure rather than doing one's best. How do you cope up with defeat and problems? Your response to this question says a lot about your character. One of the keys to solving this mystery of success is understanding your priorities. Some people set their sights on money, power, fame, positions. We have to understand our priorities. Success does not come by reading or memorizing the principles that lead to success, but by understanding them and setting your priorities to apply to them. Number 5. Looking for shortcuts. No free lunch. A king called his advisers and asked them to write down the wisdom of the ages so that he could pass it on the future generation. After a lot of work, the advisers came up with the several volumes of wisdom and presented them to the king. The king called his advisers and said that it was too long and that people would not read it. The king told his advisers they would have to condense it. The advice went back to work and came back with one volume. The king said it was still too long, so they came back again with one chapter. Again it was too long, even one page was too long, said the king. Finally, the advisers brought back one sentence that satisfied the king. He said that if there was one piece of wisdom that he wanted to pass on the future generations, it would be there is no free lunch. Basically, there is no free lunch. Means that you don't get something for nothing. In other words, you get what you put in. If you don't put much into project, you won't get much out of it. Of course, every society has its share of free loaders who are looking for something for nothing. The easier way may actually be the tougher way. Once there was a lark singing in the forest. A farmer came by with a box full of worms. The lark stopped him and asked, "What do you have in the box and where are you going?" The farmer replied that he had worms and that he was going to the market to trade them for some feathers. The lark said, "I have many feathers. I will pluck one and give it to you, and that will save me looking for worms." The farmer gave the worms to the lark, and the lark plucked a feather and gave it in the return. The next day the same thing happened, and the day after, and on it until the day came that the lark had no more feathers. Now it could no longer fly to go hunting for worms. It started looking ugly and stopped singing, and very soon it died. The moral of the story is quite clear. What the lark thought was an easy way to get food turned out to be the tougher way after all. Isn't the same thing true in our lives? Many times we look for the easy way. which really ends up being the harder way. Losers look for quick fixes. There are two ways of getting rid of weeds in your yard: the easy way and the not so easy way. The easy way may be to run a lawn mower. The yard looks fine for a while, but it's only temporary solution. Soon the weeds are back. The not so easy way means getting down on your hands and knees and pulling out the weeds by the roots. It is time consuming and painful, but the weeds will stay away for a longer time. The first solution appeared easy, but the problem remained. The second solution was not so easy, but took care of the problem. From the root, the key is to get the root of the problem. From the same is true of attitudes in life. Some people spread their attitudes of bitterness and resentment, and these attitudes keep cropping up in different parts of their lives. The problem with people today is that they want instant answer. They are looking for 1 minute solution to everything. Like instant coffee, they want instant happiness. But there are no quick fixes. This attitude leads to disappointment. Number 6. Selfishness and greed. Individuals and organizations that have selfishness attitude have no right to expect growth. Their attitude is to keep passing the buck without regard for the welfare of others. Greed always wants more. Needs can be satisfied, but greed cannot. It is a cancer of the soul. Greed destroys relationships. Greed comes out of poor self-esteem, which manifests itself as a false pride, pretense, or keeping up with the Joneses. The way out of greed is to learn to live within your means and be satisfied. Being content does not mean lack of ambition. Where does it end? A wealthy farmer was once offered all the land he could walk on his day provided he returned by sundown to the point at which he started. To get a head start, early the next morning the farmer started covering ground quickly because he wanted to get as much land as he could. Even though he was tired, he kept going all afternoon because he did not want to lose this once in lifetime opportunity to gain more wealth. Late in the afternoon, he remembered that the condition he had to fulfill to get the land was to get back to the starting point by sundown. His greed had gotten him far from the starting point. He started his return journey keeping an eye on how close he was to sundown. The closer it got to sundown, the faster he ran. He was exhausted and out of the breath, and he pushed himself behind the point of endurance. He collapsed upon reaching the starting point and died. He did not make it before sundown. He was buried, and all the land he needed was a small plot. There is a lot of truth in this story and a lesson to be learned. Whether the farmer was wealthy or not, any greedy person would have ended the same way. Number 7. Lack of conviction. People who lack conviction take the middle of the road. And guess what happens to those in the middle of the road? They get run over. People without conviction do not take a stand. They go along to get along because they lack confidence and courage. They conform in order to get accepted even when they know that what they are doing is wrong. Some people consider themselves a shade better because they do not support the wrong. However, they lack the conviction to oppose. But by not opposing something you know it is wrong, you are actually supporting it. One of the important secrets to success is instead of being against something, be for something. That way you don't become part of the problem but part of the solution. It takes conviction to take a stand. Conviction takes faith. Faith without action is delusion. Faith does not wait for miracles but produces them. If you think you can or if you think you can't, you are right. Henry Ford. We all have low moments. We all fall down and get hurt. We all have moments when we doubt ourselves and indulge in self pity. The point is to overcome these feelings and restore your faith. There are three kinds of people in this world: people who make things happen, people who watch things happen, people who wonder what happened. Which category do you fall into? Number 8. Lack of understanding of nature's law. How many times it thundered before Franklin took the hint? How many apples fell on Newton's head before he took the hint? Nature is always hitting at us. It hints over and over again, and suddenly we take the hint. Robert Frost. Success is a matter of laws, and we are referring to the laws of nature. Change is nature's law. We are either moving forward or we are going backward. We are either creating or disintegrating. There is no status of quo. A seed, if it is not planted in the earth to create as disintegrates, change is inevitable. It is going to happen whether you like it or not. All progress is change, but all change is not progress. You must evaluate change and accept it only if it makes sense. Acceptance without evaluation amounts to conforming behavior, a sign of lack of confidence and low self-esteem. There is lot to be said about tradition. Growth for the sake of growth is the philosophy of Cell. It is negativity spreading all over. That is not growth, that is destruction. Growth in order to be meaningful must be positive. Success is not matter of luck, but of loss. Law of cause and effect. In order to succeed, we need to understand the law of cause and effect and the relationship between action and result. For every effect, there is a cause. The law of cause and effect is the same as the law of sowing and reaping. The law of sowing and reaping are: number one, you must have the desire to sow. Desire is the starting point. Number two, what you sow, so shall you reap. If you sow potatoes, you are only going to reap potatoes. Number three, you must sow before you reap. Sowing takes place before reaping. You must give before you get. You cannot accept the fireplace to give heat before you put in the fuel. Some people are constantly looking to get before they give. It does not work this way. Number 4. When you sow a seed, you reap manifold. If you sow a positive seed, your harvest will be manifold in the positive, and if you sow a negative seed, your harvest will be manifold in the negative. It's not uncommon to see people going against nature's law. Number 5. A farmer knows that you cannot sow and reap in the same day. There is always a period of gestation. Number 6. You sow sparingly, you reap sparingly. You sow abundantly, you reap abundantly. It is like the law of physics. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Most of the time, people are trying to change the effect while the cause remains. Either you constantly feed your mind with the positives or negative, automatically fill the vacuum. Many ancient sages also said what James Allen said in this book: as a man thinketh. A man's mind is like a garden. If we plant a good seed, we will have good garden. But if we don't plant anything, something will grow, and that will be weeds. That is nature's law. The same holds true in our lives. In fact, I would go a step further. Even if we plant good seeds, weeds would still grow. The process of weeding goes on forever. If you put a water in a glass and put it in a sub-zero temperature, it will freeze. That is not surprising. This is nature's law. In fact, that is the only thing that will happen. Our thoughts are causes. You saw the thought, you reap an action. You saw an action, you reap a habit. You saw a habit, you reap a character. You saw a character, you reap a destiny. It all starts with the thought. Law of attraction. We attract to ourselves not what we want, but what we are. The old phrase, birds of feather flock together, holds true. Negative thinkers are dangerous. They attract other negative people, react negatively, and accept the worst, and they are the disappointed. Have you observed how at any social occasion successful people attract other successful people? Failures attract other failures, and together they will mourn, groan, and complain. Our friends are not the kind of people we want, but the kind of people we are. Number 9. unwillingness to plan and prepare. Everyone has a will to win, but very few have the will to prepare to win. Vince Lombardi. Most people spend more time planning a party or a vacation than planning their lives. Preparation. Confidence comes from preparation, which is nothing but planning and practicing. Winners put pressure on themselves. That is the pressure of preparing and not worrying about winning. If we practice poorly, we play poorly because we play as we practice. The difference between a success and failure is the difference between doing exactly right and almost right. A complete mental and physical preparation is the result of sacrifice and self discipline. It is easy to be average but tough to be the best. No wonder the average people choose the easy way. Preparation is the necessary edge to succeed in any field. Preparation is equal to purpose plus principle plus planning plus practice plus perseverance plus patience plus pride. Preparation leads to confidence. Preparation means tolerating failure but never accepting it. It means having the courage to face defeat without feeling defeated, being disappointed without being discouraged. Preparation means learning from our mistake. There is nothing wrong with making mistakes. We all do. A fool in one who makes the same mistake twice. A person who makes a mistake and doesn't correct it commits a bigger one. The best way to handle a mistake is to admit to it quickly, not dwell on it, learn from it, never repeat it, not assign blame or make excuses. Pressure comes from being unprepared. There is no substitute for preparation. Practice and hard work, desire and wishful thinking won't do it. Only preparation will give you the competitive edge. Pressure can paralyze you if you are not prepared. Just as water gravitates to its own path, success gravitates to those who are prepared. Weak effort gets weak result. Persistence in name we give to. A purpose, preparation, patience, principles, positive attitude, a plan, pride, practice, prize.